Hey everybody. Saturday night, just sitting here enjoying my Gourami tank. I've got some new additions in this tank and I've been keeping a fairly close eye on them over the last couple of days. I put a couple of chocolate Gouramis in here and they tend to be very picky eaters apparently, and I've been finding that out to be the case. Oh, wow, I've never seen that before. That is the female honey Gourami. And she just gave a bunch of what for to my new chocolate Gourami here, which I'm absolutely in love with. So this tank is not ideally suited for these chocolate Gouramis. I've got two of them in here, and they tend to like dimly lit tanks. Honestly, black water would probably be preferable to them, and they like very calm tanks, and I have a lot of water circulation in this tank, but there are plenty of spots where they can sit in very calm water, and one of the chocolate Gouramis spends a lot of time in the fern up here off of this piece of woodwork. Speaking of Gouramis, I've got the male honey Gourami is down here in the corner nibbling on some of the algae wafers that are down there. So there's another one of the Gouramis. Of course, we got the reflection of the light next to me here. There you can see. So I've been watching them pretty closely. There's the one and there's the other. And at least one of them is eating regularly. I believe this one here that spends most of its time down at the left end of the tank, I've gotten to eat tubifex worms. Whenever I put the tubifex worms in, this one eats them fairly well. It's still a really picky eater, but it also spends a lot of time cruising around the tank, and I see it picking little things out of the water. Most of the time it spits them back out, but not always. And I see it pecking at the surface of the rocks and the surface of the leaves, and it pecks at the roots. So I don't know if it's actually eating the vegetation or if there's little tiny stuff on the vegetation that they're getting. I do know this tank has little insects in it. I want to say they're called springbacks or springtails or something like that. And they are tiny, tiny little bugs on the surface of the water. They just look like little floating specks until you see them jump. So I would think that they would be a sharp enough predator that they'd be able to nip those little fish right off the surface. So I think they're going to be okay. And as time goes on, I might look for other ways to get them fed. I have seen the one that spends most of its time down at the left end of the tank. I have seen that one nibble on flake food. Now, more often than not, it spits it out when it's done. You know, it just kind of puts it in its mouth and spits it back out. But not always. I have seen it actually eat flake food. And I was told that they don't do that. So that's a good sign if it's that new to the tank and it's already nibbling on flake food. And I have seen it down at the bottom nibbling on stuff. It didn't nibble directly on the algae wafers that were on the bottom, but you can see it getting buffeted by the current a little bit there. It didn't nibble directly on the algae wafers that were down there, but I have seen it feeding off the bottom and picking stuff off the bottom. So knowing that, it could very well nibble on the algae wafers that are down there. I don't know. So I'm going to continue keeping my eye on them and make sure everybody's doing okay and staying nice and healthy. Want to make sure their bellies are, nice and full and not shrunken and sunken in. I have also made a few minor changes to the tank. I just recently got in here and did a big water change, and I really opened the tank up since I've got new fish in here, and I removed a big chunk of the Java fern that was on this side of this piece of woodwork. You can actually see the woodwork in there now a little bit better. So all that Java fern got ripped out, which now allows you to see the texture of the rocks a little better. You can actually see the shape of this one because I pulled a big chunk of Java fern that was wedged in there out as well. and now the tank is much more wide open. And then of course, as always, I went in and thinned out all my my floating water sprite. So as always, I've got plenty of water sprite for sale. If you're interested in water sprite or Java fern, I'll put my email down below and you can hit me up. And again, I've got some of that for sale. I'll sell a big old bag of it for $20. That includes shipping. So again, hit me up on the email or leave a comment below or whatever. Get in touch and I'll get you the water sprite or Java fern. I also got in here very recently, and I mean very recently, about 20 minutes ago, and my red tiger lotus here had something on the bottom that I didn't know what it was until I looked at it closely, and it was a bulb that had either uprooted or it was a baby that had been spat out or something, but it was a bulb with a bunch of little baby shoots on it. So I removed it, and it's now planted in my 125 African themed tank. So hopefully, even though I do have some plant-eating fish in there, hopefully the red tiger lotus will be able to take hold and grow in there. It would be nice to get some good vibrant color in there. Now, the last fish I put in the tank, I've been kind of hoping we'd get to see an appearance while I sat here and chatted, and I do not yet see him, but I put a Royal Farlowella. Farlowella being a whiptail catfish, or I suppose I should say a whiptail catfish is a Farlowella, and then there's various species of Farlowella. Now, I've had a few of these over the years, and they've never really lasted very long. I've always had issues with them. Within the first year, they've died. But I'm doing something different with the tank now. I've got some poultry grit, which is crushed coral and crushed oyster shells. I've got some of that in the filter, and I'm hoping it will add enough mineral ions to the water that even though it is very soft water, the Farlowella will do okay. Now, Farlowella are supposed to be in soft water, so that's why I think that my problem is my water's actually too soft, and I need to actually add some minerals to it to get the water, mineralized enough that the Farlowella will do okay. So we'll have to wait and see how that works out, but I'm hoping for the best. Trying to find him again. It's really hard to see up through the leaves there, but that's one of the charms of this fish, is watching it move through that floating water sprite like that. It is just such a cool fish. I'm so happy with this. And it's so pretty. I've always been one for the more subdued colors. I don't shy away from fish just because they're not bright and vibrant. I love my Tenopoma. My Synodontis catfish is sort of a dull brown color. My snakeskin gouramis were, that sort of dull gray brownish color. So for me to just buy like a brown and tan fish, that's not an issue at all. But when I've actually got it here in the tank and I can see it under the light, it actually does have quite a lot of vibrancy to it. It's still sort of brown and tan, but it's like a golden tan, and it's got sparkly eyes, and it's just a really, really pretty little fish. And then of course the behavior is just awesome. I love it. If you couldn't tell, I'm a big fan of gouramis to begin with. And then of course these little chocolate gouramis are ones I've said before that I've wanted for a very long time, and I finally took the chance and got some the other day. So I guess that Farlowella is not going to make an appearance. I'll see if I can stretch my arms one more time to get over this end of the tank, because I just saw that other gourami swimming down here. Somewhere down here. There it is. So this is fairly typical, and there you go. There's some of the behavior I was talking about, how it's pecking off the surface of the rocks. I can only assume it's finding food when it's doing that. My tanks are very mature. I'm not a stickler about keeping them super clean. I'm not a stickler about keeping the algae and all that out of them. So if ever there was a sort of naturalistic environment for them to be able to find some forage in a tank without me actively putting, live food in there for them, I think there's probably already some food in there for them in addition to the tubifex worms that I've found that they do eat. So I'm going to go ahead and call that good and wrap this up and just say that was a little update here on my gourami tank. So thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed. You never know what you're going to get with me. So don't forget, this one here is my gourami tank. Thanks again, and I'll see you real soon in the next one.